right, we're just about ready to get started. Thank you all for those that have joined since I said hello earlier. It's time for us to get started on our webinar. Appreciate everyone taking time today. My name is Sherry Blanche, and I'm going to show you a few platinum tips and tricks. So I know I may be going over some things that many of you are familiar with, possibly. Feel free to ask questions. If you could ask the questions in the Q&A, that would help me most. If I see things in chat, I may pop over there now and then, but I'll have the Q&A open and try to answer things as we go along and make sure we get as many things answered as possible. So again, this is the Platinum Tips and Trick webinar, and my name is Sherry Blanche. So we're going to go over some pretty high-level details as far as just some things that might make Workamajig more efficient for you, a little easier to use. So want to make sure everybody can see my screen. I'm on the projects page. If you don't see that, certainly I am sharing my own test environment. So again, things may not be the prettiest, but just give you a few details of how to organize, display things, and a few shortcuts here and there. So again, I'll check the Q&A now and then. If you have questions, certainly let me know in the QA box. So one of the first things that I'm going to look at is under your login name, the quickest way to get into the help guide, and I'm going to show you where some of these tips are in the guide as well, is just by clicking under the more. Some things that you may or may not see in your own environment, that's fine. That's just by design. I'm an admin in this site of my own, so it clearly lets me go everywhere, see everything. So you may or may not see things the same as my site, and again, that's by design. But when I click open from my login, that guide, you can just simply type in Platinum Tips or tips, and you'll get into this guide that we're going to really kind of go over as far as some quick things to see and do in Platinum. So that's just under your own login name to get easily to that. Now you may be aware that we have this little information button up here. And what's nice about this is if you're relatively new to a company or in the system, you can open that up and say, well, show me how to add time in my time card or something that you have rights to do. And just give me a quick guide on how to do something. And it will just literally take your hand and say, click here, do this, do that. The reason we do also in this say to show all apps is because sometimes people have created custom menus. And in order to get to some of the apps that may not be showing based on your custom menu that somebody created for you, this would be the quickest way to make sure you can get to the tabs in order to do something. So it's just going to guide you click by click into some areas to say, well, here's how you need to do these things. And here's what we want you to be clicking on. And at any point, you can then close that information button and just stop that guide up here to not be running any further if you're finished walking through that as far as how to go into certain areas. And this will relate to, again, what you have options to do and see. So a nice quick tutorial option, again, to just take your hand, guide you through a few simple steps that way. Now, one of the things that we really like to make sure people are aware of is that we know you like to be working in lots of different pages and places, doing things throughout the system, especially if you have multiple responsibilities that you work on. So if you're on a PC, you can hold down the control key. If you're on a Mac, you hold down the command key. And if you go to a whole different area, for example, billing today, and you click on a different area or a different record, it pops open that area in a new tab. So now I can be in my projects, I can be in the billing today. Maybe I even am doing something continually in one of the projects and I want that open to the dashboard. I can do that same control or command click and open this in an entirely new tab. And these are addresses just in your site that you can bookmark and also open from bookmarks. So the quickest way to get into different areas, have things at tab through these different records or pages or reports or whatever it may be, is to just open them up in a new tab, and then you can bookmark anything as well to quickly have that open for you. So you can also come in and you can set your browser to automatically open those same sites. So if you say, I'm always in these tabs, I always want these to open, you can simply go into your browser and you can set your startup page to say, open the current browsers that I have. And many are familiar with that functionality to say, when I open Chrome or Firefox or Safari or IE, whatever it might be that you're primarily using, then you can just say, always open these same tabs for me every time I open my browser. And it would automatically then start your pages with all these current tabs open. So that makes things very quick and simple as soon as you start the system and your browser. And the setting for that may vary browser to browser. So, you can simply just go in and find how to set your startup page and find that option regardless of which browsers you're using. We do support all, current primary browsers. We do sometimes have people, of course, send in, hey, I have something happening that I'm trying to figure out. Sometimes there are things that are specific to a certain browser or a certain environment, a certain laptop or mobile device versus desktop. So we do often say, well, what version of operating system, browser? So just a quick tip on that too, to help you troubleshoot things. It is great to always know, well, it's only specific to certain browsers or we're seeing it across all browsers and things like that. So just a little side note about the browser options as well. Now, the other thing is you can come in here and you can decide if you have the ability and your system admin have allowed you to change your default settings. You can come in here and you can tell Workamajig which page you want opened up whenever you log in. It's just simply clicking on the default page, and it starts always with just the creative today, but maybe you are always in the billing and you want that to default open, or one of the admin pages, or purchasing. So whatever your main responsibility is, you can simply change this, and the next time you log out and log in, it will open up to that page. I have mine set to this project page. So again, you can set that to be what you want. And the ability to edit these things under your own login is decided by your admin. A lot of the display options and things can be controlled by your system admin. So they may have started things out a certain way, and then you have options to, display things and change your own individual settings, but your admin can control a lot of things in the system setting as far as what they allow or not allow and how they want things to default to begin with for people. So again, you can always reach out to one of your system admin, or maybe you are the system admin, and note that there are a lot of controls globally that can be applied, to default a certain way. So I don't see any questions yet. I'm going to open that back up, make sure I don't have any. So again, if you have questions, certainly pop those in the QA and I'll open those up as I can. So the other thing we're going to talk about is, again, some other shortcuts. Maybe you have a long list of projects and you have some that are, I don't know, specific projects you're trying to find and always get to easily. You, of course, have searches at the top of most pages, but you can come in as well and always create your favorites of any record that you open, whether it's projects, clients, companies, and that just allows you to create this quick list of here's everything, here's my favorites, and it's just a quick toggle of creating those favorites by adding the star to any of those records. And then you can, get to a shorter list of favorites that way. So once you've created favorites, whether it's tasks on the Creative Today page, projects, or something else, you can simply go ahead and get to that list. And you'll see that right up at the top once you've created at least one favorite. So if you don't see this favorites tab, it just means that you don't have any created yet. So if you open up one project and you hit the star, then you'll see the tab. If I came in right now and I unchecked the star on all of these that are out here, it would eventually remove that tab if nothing had been marked as a favorite. So the reason you won't see this tab is just meaning nothing has been created yet as a favorite. You see it as soon as you create one or more. So you'll see it once you go into one project and hit the star. So a little talk about the difference between system settings and display options. Most only see the ability to change their own individual display options. Now, this display option is throughout Platinum, throughout different records, pages. You'll have the ability to decide how you want certain information displayed on each page. And depending on where you are, these display options obviously change. So these are related to projects. And sometimes, depending on your security right and your level of what you can access, these may or may not change what is limited based on those rights. So you can see I could quickly narrow down this list of projects. If I didn't have access to all projects, which I do, so this doesn't change much, but if I still check some of these additional options, I would see a much shorter list of projects on my page out here than if I uncheck those options. So first thing, if you say, well, gee, I'm not seeing certain things in my pages, it's often these display options that have limited by the choices that have been selected. And you can then narrow down more specific, most default to being active jobs and assignments and things. But you can always be editing additional statuses and options within here to see the information the way that you need to see that. Now you'll see up here that I have this refresh. So there are manual refresh options throughout. So if you're on pages and you know there might be some new projects that came in or new assignments that were given, and the system does refresh at certain intervals, but you now want to manually make sure you're seeing things that you think you should see that haven't automatically refreshed yet, you can just manually refresh a page or your browser up here. So those are ways to quickly refresh information. So if there are things not displaying, and you know your options are set correctly here, you can always manually refresh if you don't want to wait for the system to update the refresh automatically. So that's another quick option to help you see things that way. Let me check my questions. Okay, so I think I answered the one about seeing favorites. So I'll clear that one out. Now you'll also see that there's a quick collapse, which is nice. And this is varied, again, based on what type of view we have. So if I need to quickly just say I want to open up, if I'm grouping this by client or status or other, I get this quick collapse expand to then open up these groupings. Anytime we have groupings of information and options, you'll be able to either manually or automatically expand and collapse depending on what type of report or screen. Traffic calendar is a good example that has an expand all or collapse all to then go in and decide one by one which ones you really want to go into. The column sets are nice throughout project schedules and project pages because it lets you create different grids of information to just toggle between those. So this is, again, a security right to create these. And what this does is it says, well, here's kind of a default that our system admin, and if I come down to the setting, your system admin could have said, well, here's the information and columns we want on these pages, whether it's a project schedule or project page or creative today grid view, whatever types of grid views we have and display options, they can set these up default a certain way and edit to what to show or not show, and also what order to arrange these grids in. So what's nice about the column sets in different places that you may see is it lets me create different options within those. So I can quickly say, well, I want this column set to be limited to certain information that's related to budgets. And now I want to go back to a default layout that everybody else sees. And these column sets can be visible, made visible or not to groups, group by group. So you can control also who can actually use these, who can see these based on the way that you set them up and create them when you edit them. So they actually have their own control of what groups get to access this column set or that column set. So they're very nice and useful in a lot of different screens. So whenever you see the ability to create those, you'll be able to, again, arrange a quick option to show different column information um, quickly and easily up here in the toggle. And you don't see this again unless you've created them. So those show based on actually having some column sets created to begin with. And again, we put a lot of things under more, and what's under more is just based on where you're at. So views of projects, if I don't want to go to the main project manager today and views, or I don't want to come here under the global search, which is really three things. And I say, well, I need to get to my view of all my projects, and I don't want to navigate to one of these other pages, I can also just quickly go to my views right from here. So you'll see different options under the more, and it will always relate to where are you, what are you doing, that then the more button will, you know, give you a lot more options of information that you need to go into and see. Now you'll see that I'm opening things now on top of a page, and the other way to open up additional things on top of another page and still be able to quickly get back to the main page you were on. This one, the more view, did that automatically. If I also used a shift key, I can open up a whole different area on top of where I am. And that will also open a page or a place on top of your existing page. So Shift key does this open up, and then I can click one by one to close. Or if I have a lot of things open, let's say I open this on top and then I open another thing on top. If I want to close all of those, I can just simply go out to the far left and close everything all at once. On the favorites, I do have a question of on the favorites, can you select by client? So it sounds like what you're kind of wanting to do is say, well, favorite all of these projects under one client. There's not a mass mark all these as my favorites, so I can't really say all of these at once. I want to make a favorite. I would need to go into each one. So I believe that's your question. you would have to go into each project to mark all of these as a favorite, because again, you may have active, inactive. This one might be displaying certain projects based on your filters and your display options. So no, you would still favorite projects or records. Now you can create a a client company favorite, and that one is if we came in and said, well, this is my client, it's this child 2 company, I can come into the record itself and make this a favorite, but this favorite is showing up in a different place. This is my company favorites. So if I want this, I could be here under billing and clients, and I could say, well, show me my favorite clients up here in my client list, versus projects are going to be very, you might have, again, lots of different projects for a client, active and inactive. So the favorite of the projects would be individual on the project page. So I hope that made sense. So those are some quick tips. If you wanted to, you could also come in and you can right click to duplicate a tab. So you could say, well, I have this open and I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate my Billing Today tab. I'm not sure the scenario of why you'd want the same record or area open twice. You would want to be careful if you duplicated and had, for example, a project open in 2 tabs in the same project. So if I opened up this twice, or I duplicated it and I'm doing things in the project in this tab and in this tab, it will only remember the most recent save. So if there are some areas that require you to say save, some are automatic, some are not, you would want to be careful that you're making sure that you're not overwriting something that you did in one of the duplicated tabs. So if you do open duplicate tabs of the same area or record, just make sure that you're making the edits and the saves in just one of them. So it would be important to do that. So all right, so that's a few. I do have another question. Oh yeah, okay. So you're welcome for that answer. So a few other things that I want to show. I'll go to a little bit different page. Let's go to the project manager today. So again, often one thing that I will note that's kind of a little bit of a tip is sometimes you'll come into Creative Today or any of the Today pages, and you'll see a lot of like hundreds, tens of thousands of unread conversations, whether it's project conversations. One tip, it might not be in the actual tip guide, but now and then, if you're always reading and using the email itself to read messages that also appear here in the system as unread, you can come in and quickly clear those unread messages. It'll have a little blue link to say, mark everything as read. I can also do that up here under my name. If I just say, I'm really reading all the emails and things that we're sending from my email, I'm just going to mark everything as read because I know I've read it somewhere else. Now, you would only want to do that if you really had read that message and conversation or whatever it might be in your email, and you're not wanting to see it here on these pages as unread. Now they're meant to be, here's some things that are going on in these projects that you're assigned and or managing that we want you to quickly highlight and see and be able to read from here. And you, again, if you're also having your system set up for messages to be under your notification bell, which this one, I'll show you where that setting is, to have it be in the system or by email only or both. Even messages here, you can quickly say, I read these messages, I read them somewhere else. I'm going to just clear this list. So again, it will help you go in and make sure that you just don't have a lot of things loading in the background on your pages that you don't really need because some work more from an email itself to be seeing and reading things. And what we see under the notification can also be changed in the system setup under, I just opened that in a new tab, under preferences. So one of the nice things is you might review these notification options as far as how these are sent and how we see them in the system. Again, do we want them by email only in the Workamajig notifications, or do we want them both? And mine are set to both. And again, that's why I see some things up here under my notifications, and I can come into my messages and also open up things that were sent by email if I want, or clear them all if I've already looked at them elsewhere. I won't go into a lot of system settings, but again, there may be a lot of things that can be rearranged based on what your workflow and work needs are. So, and I am right now on Chrome and on a Mac and a desktop. Things may also work a little differently if you're on a laptop, if you're on a phone or a mobile device of some sort. And we often get asked, well, how do I create an app on a phone? It's still browser based. It's still the address of your site that you log into, whatever that might be. And if you bookmark that, then it becomes like an app to where you can just quickly open up that site on a mobile phone or whatever mobile device you're on. But it is still browser based. So you do still open up a standard browser and access it just from the site itself. Now, another thing we'll look at is if we're in a view, for example, of active projects, another thing that we can do is you have some views that have sorting options already applied to them. Now, again, if you are not the one that create the custom views of what you want to see in these views of projects or invoices or whatever it might be, purchase orders, any view of any kind, they do have some sorting already done by your admin or by default of what do I want sorted first, second, third, and ascending or descending. But you can also come in if you want to, and you can manually sort by these columns. So if we said, well, we're sorting a certain way, and now I want to sort within the groupings, by the way, it's still going to group them. But if I want to then sort within the grouping amount billed, I can live sort it and have it flip these amounts the way that I want. And if you want to sort multiple columns, you can also come in and say, well, I'm going to sort first by amount billed, and then I'm going to hold down either the control key on the PC or command key on the um, Mac, and then you can also live sort more than one column by holding down those keys to sort multiple columns if you want to. So that also lets you manually sort by those header columns and do a secondary sort with the um, control key as well if you're holding that down. Trying to see. Yeah, so I can sort the first and then the second. Maybe I now want to sort by number. I think it goes one or two layers deep. So, all right. Now, we occasionally can try an incognito window to try to make sure that maybe there are some plugins or extensions that are conflicting with the system and the way it's supposed to behave. So you can occasionally start an incognito window to shut off all plugins and extensions to try to see if that resolves things. And if so, then we decide, well, what plugin or extension might it be and turn them on one by one. However, we do not, if we have private browsing and pop-ups turned off to not allow, then the system will not be able to operate as needed. So, no history and private browsing does prevent the system from working the way that it should be. So just an important thing to note. The other thing in the views of data that we have in here that we're running, once we search, and again, we can quickly open back up the filters if we said, well, we wanted to just narrow it down to the production or estimating status. The other thing in the views and the grid views of information. Looks like I don't have any in estimating. Well, that's surprising. Oh yeah, because I'm in active projects, so that conflicts. So we do have to be careful, just like I demonstrated. If I'm looking for active projects, my status estimating is not considered active. So I would never find active projects in a status that's not considered active, which is a system setting in the status code itself. But I can resize these columns. So I can, most of the places in the system, you can come in, open up and control the column width just by grabbing the side of the column and resizing that. Now you do have constant column width that you can also use. So whoever is creating the projects can come in and also say, I want the print width to be 1/2 inch, 2 inches standard, but then the live expanding and collapsing is just by grabbing that column header. So that's important. Now your browser zoom also matters greatly, because if you come in and you zoom your browser, you may occasionally end up with some display issues, especially if you have a zoomed browser and you're also now in deliverables, for example. You would want to typically have this at 100%. If you have some display issues, first thing to check is, do I have this zoomed way up? Or, generally it's when you're zoomed in too high, or if you've come into settings and you've changed the font size to be very large, those may have some display conflicts. And a lot of places we have the zoom itself, for example, in the deliverable itself. So if we're in here and we want this to be zoomed, we don't really zoom the browser. We just come into the record itself and do a zoom within a deliverable or whatever we have here to zoom, rather than the display itself. So you would want to check your monitor preferences, the ratios it's set to, the font sizes, and there are a few things like that that do matter as far as some display issues that might go on. Let's see, I have, okay, so I have a question about a system admin that cannot add billing amount to the layout of my active project. Tried putting it in twice, hit apply change, and it does not save. So are you, and let me just clarify, you're on the project views, or are you on the project page that you're trying to add a billing amount to a layout of active projects? Is it the view? And could you type in that clarification? Okay, active projects, then edit view. Okay, so we're in views. Let's go into views. And I think I filtered my, I'm going to refresh my browser a little bit. By the way, if you have like 40 tabs open and 10 different programs, whatever it might be, InDesign, Excel, all these things, you occasionally will exhaust your browser cache. So now and then you do want to clear your browser cache, images and files, typically all time, to kind of refresh things. But yeah, let me take a look. So If you're here and you're in active projects and adding amount to bill, okay, so you're in, I'm assuming, so if we're modifying, and this is kind of a custom modification report, but if we're trying to do amount billed and we want that in our view, and we maybe even drag that up here, when you apply that and search, the memorize just saves the change. The modification of adding and then seeing it, um, I would have to help troubleshoot that probably on a either with your account manager and a screen share. It does seem to work for me, so I don't know. Um, you do the applied change does mean add the change I made. The memorize just means keep it that way. So I'm not sure. I'd have to probably, now I have it in there twice, of course, so I'll take one of them out. But I would have to probably help out on a separate call to see why it may not allow you to add that. It should allow you um, to change and apply and save any custom modification that you have. So if you want some more help and I can't, oh, okay, yeah, you do have to hit memorize to save it. Otherwise, it just means I'm going to change things and look at it, but I'm not sure I want it that change held. The memorize is what holds any changes that you do want to keep that way. And another little tip, kind of report writing, I guess, more than overall, but when you make changes, you can always copy the view that you're in currently to that way it can help people that maybe you don't want to change it for everybody else and you want your own custom view. If you copy this, it says, I'm going to copy what's in here to begin with. It will make it private to you unless you change the setting to allow it to be viewed by others. And that way you can say, well, everybody else still has the active project view that was there before, and now I have my own that I made and copied, and I made it just for me, and others don't need to be, you know, may or may not need to see that custom view that you made. So when you copy, and then it will set it to private to you unless you change the visibility to allow that to others, for others to see. Okay, so I have a question about parent-child. That's not really a platinum tip and trick so much. Uh, I'll try to answer that a little bit. If these things need further clarification, I will mention too that if you send an email, detailed email to support@workamajig.com, those always go to your account manager by default. And we can follow up on any questions that might need more specific answers for you and your environment and your setup. Um, Parent-child really is related to billing, and I think we would need to answer that. You can you can have, I think the question that you have, Kathy, is if you create parent-child relationships, whatever projects are already set up to those clients will maintain. It then will matter as far as what exactly you're trying to do with parent-child relationships. You wouldn't have to remove projects, but I think I need a more specific, since it's also related to campaigns and it would relate to billing, we probably want a more specific question and maybe even a call with you and your account manager to go over that parent-child change and how it relates to existing projects and campaigns. So there was a further question on if it said save versus memorize. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Oh, great. Okay, glad you're getting more help with that, Kathy. I'll just mark that as a follow-up later on. As far as any recommendations on, like the suggestion was when we're modifying views, couldn't we maybe change it from if we make edits, why don't we say save instead of memorize? Yeah, I don't know. That's we say save a lot of other places. I don't know if there's a specific reason this doesn't say save versus memorize. We could certainly always take suggestions. It's interesting, in all the years, that's the first time I've really heard that, but we will take things that you say might make more sense and might be more helpful, and we will take your recommendations on enhancements and things that we could do differently, and we can send those over to the dev team for consideration. And we do appreciate the feedback, and that's actually kind of a nice comment of, hey, could you maybe like relabel this or that a certain thing, and this makes more sense. What we do with those generally is there's no guarantee or estimated time given on those, but we will take them and send them to the development team. And what they do is they go through enhancement suggestions that we really do appreciate everybody giving, and they say, that is an enhancement we believe would be helpful for everybody. We have heard a number of people make this recommendation or suggestion, and let's give it some more thought. And they will go through and in future updates sometimes make those changes. So certainly do send those enhancement suggestions in to support at workamajig.com, and we'll see what we can do. And then again, we do appreciate people's feedback on, gee, we wondered if you'd ever thought about doing this, that, or the other, or naming conventions and things like that. Now, I will say too that these standard menu items, sometimes people say, hey, we want it to be named something else. Well, we do have the ability for your admin to come in and create custom menus and name them different things. Now, the main fields in the system and the main tabs at some level will still be the same, but we do have abilities to come in and you can create custom menu sets to have named and created the way you want. And again, the reason we have the show all apps is because if somebody comes in and they create a menu their own way for their own groups, it does still relate to security of who can do what and see what and who can add, edit, delete. But that is why this show all apps is really important, because if you've created your own custom menu of whatever it is, then you still want to be able to show other apps that you might not have in your menu, but that somebody really does have the right to go into and see, and something that they need to do that's outside of a menu that you created and customized. There's a question about, can you link the approval disapproval of a deliverable to a task? There, and we're getting into, there are webinars, by the way, on pretty advanced deliverable features, and including a deliverable board using tasks and or statuses. The approval disapproval is not so much the link, but there are ways to link deliverable rework tasks and or a deliverable board to be task-based versus status or task-based. So you can use things like this. That is more of a webinar related to deliverables. And I am going to show you too, by the way, when we come into this guide, and I'll just open up another tab over here. These webinars, one thing that might help you is to come back in either to the overall deliverable board and advanced deliverable features, or you can come into past webinars, and we have quite a few here related to deliverables that will help answer some more specific questions. So again, you can link deliverables to a task and or status. So if it's under rework versus approved or rejected, you could tie it to a task and put it on a deliverable board. But again, that's more of a um, deliverable webinar question, or one more specific to your account manager. So not to put that completely off. Now, keep in mind that some things, again, that I show and see is because of the settings and things I've turned on and advanced features that you may or may not have or be aware of. Anytime you see things and you say, hey, I want to know how to use this or that or the other, reach out to your account manager and make sure that you tell them that I saw something and I don't see any ability. Where is that? How do I turn that on? And again, they can help follow up with some more advanced settings, whether it be system transaction preferences or other preferences that you want to turn on and enable. And sometimes it's something that we would enable specifically. So reach out. Happy to help out with some more things that you might see in here that you might not see and want to see. Now you have, of course, different behaviors if you're using a mouse versus a keyboard. There are some things related to if you want to hold down a control key and you're using a mouse spin wheel, you can zoom things without taking your hand off the mouse and you want to zoom. So there's a few things like that. There's obviously keyboard shortcut details that can help you. Again, it will be based on what type of environment. Again, zooming in images or text and things like that could be a keyboard shortcut as well as just coming up to a zoom. And again, might even be related to using a mouse versus a trackpad or something else. Now, and there are some things as well on right click, left click, that you can also be controlling things based on what type of mouse you're using. I do have a question too about background color. In the settings, company logo doesn't fill the full page. So images do need to be a certain size. This image I put on is actually probably too large. It takes too long to load. There are two things. This one I even just came in. I think I did this on my own login background menu background. So this is individual. There are also system setup under the account information itself for visual appearance. What logo, what background do you want everybody having until they change their own here? They can also, maybe this is the company one. I can't remember what I did, but there are also some system settings here as far as your visual appearance of your company site. Oh, I did use this in my company-wide background. And there are guides on the image and what size, generally like I think 1x4 72 DPI for report logos. You have some report logos that print on reports. There's other logos that are set up per estimate and invoice layouts that are individual to each layout. So there are a lot of different places, and there are details of what sizes and what DPI and what type of file we recommend. Again, this one that I added is too large, but you can see it takes a while to load. So, and sometimes it will stretch or be a little bit out of because of the ratio. And there's really nothing we can do other than try to get it as close as possible based on your screen sizes. And then there are some things in here too with the logos on, let me see if I can find that. As far as if you've created them with a Mac and taking out some of the, trying to find that one. Yeah, right here. There sometimes can be those resource forks in a file that you can come in and change and save as to remove some things that might create some issues with logos depending on where you're trying to add that and upload those logos. So generally, again, I think it's 1x4, this 1x4 image, 72 DPI, but you do typically have to play around a good bit with these sometimes. If you want to send something to us and have us try and help out with any things that are not appearing correctly, we can always try to do that as well. And then there was another question about, oh, the little I button. That is limited, by the way, this button here. is not the full guide. Now I can get into the guide right here, into the full release notes, and open the help guide here, and it will open, but I won't see everything here. These are real high level primary functions that almost everybody uses. So this step by step, click here, click here, click here. These will be a little bit more limited, this I, versus if I go into the guide and try to find information about a logo size or something else. It's more in depth in the guide. And then if we're still missing information or you're having trouble finding it in the guide, email us and we'll quickly help answer more specifically to you and your setup, and also help. I often like to send related guides that outline some more of the information as well. And sometimes we're still updating these guides continually. So if it's missing, just email and we'll help out. However, quickly and generally within a couple of hours, get back to you by email to help out with some things and more specific questions. Let's see, I think I answered those. So one nice thing that most are aware of by now, but we have a lot of things now searchable that never used to be searchable. So if you're used to have been in here for years and you're used to Flash, and you came into what we know are a lot of security rights, you now have the ability to quickly search security rights, custom field, custom report fields are searchable. You so many more things that you can search and find easily. So if I know that there's something related to time rights, I can simply type in a minimal amount of information to try to find the related right, or if I know it's task rights and so forth, I can just simply search these fields to find specific security rights. Now the reports themselves is really nice too, because the reports, whether standard or custom, I also can search. So if I say, well, I know I have a report about time, I can search it. It may be a custom report, it may be a standard report, but I know it has the word time in the report name. I can quickly search and find those reports to say, here's that time detail report. And of course, we've put a lot more in here for the number of times that a report has been run, when it was last modified, when it was last run. And this is in Platinum only. So if we haven't run a report in Platinum ever, it would be missing some of this information. But it is really nice to be able to quickly find billing reports or things. And then, of course, you can organize your reports and details into your own custom groups easily. But it is nice too in a report, because you can also search fields. So if I come in and I say, well, I know it's related to a date, I can type date and get all the date fields. If I know it's a custom field and I know all my custom fields start with CF underscore, I can say, let me find all my custom fields and let me find those based on what I'm trying to add to this report, whether it's a grouping or column or what have you. So this is really a huge time-saving ability to not have to say, well, I'm not sure what the field is, but I know it's a date. I have to go through all these. No, just hit date and then you'll have all the date related fields. So nice features related to those search options. Now, I do also want to mention, and let me come back out to let's go to Project Manager today. Under your global search, again, this is three things. It's a search, but we did make it much more efficient so that it's not trying to, if you say, well, I'm trying to search a project 21 dash, and almost all of the project number, it used to be that it would start searching right when you put in 21 dash, and you're like, well, no, I have too many that have this. So now it waits for enough information to say, well, this is, oh, and of course I had to pick one without, it says, this is what it starts with, and then I want to search, or no, I know it's 21-April, now I want you to search. So you tell it when you're ready to search, when you've added enough of the information in the system before you want it to actually start. So it's not sitting there and trying to, search all these 21 dash before you really have enough information entered. And the global search also might be narrowed down company-wide or for specific groups, because if we have a lot of meetings and activities and things that also hold a project number, maybe I don't want to search these areas because it will slow down that search effort, because I really typically only want to search projects. So what areas we're searching when you start out is very, very limited, because we don't want to slow down the search if you're not even using certain areas and you don't want to go in and search those modules like media, or maybe you're not using orders, or certain credit card charges, whatever it might be. We leave a lot of the search areas off until you say, no, I want to search even the meetings, the conversation notes, and that will then take more time to find something related to this same project number based on, what I'm trying to find and what data area I'm trying to search. Now, what you've been in most recently is very nice too, because you can say, I know I was just in this project. I'll just pop back in there from my recent. And then the views is just so you can get into all the views without having to go to a specific page. So again, I can say, well, now I want to go into my client invoice view, even though I'm in my project manager page. Let me just open that up. Let me go ahead and open that in a new tab. And now I'm over here in my client invoice views. So quick navigating into how to, see things and quickly open that and then decide what to search. Another thing is that when we have the print to a PDF of any information, we do also have the ability, it opens up in the screen, but we can then add the option in the printing to now say, well, we want to only print maybe 2 pages per sheet, and maybe you want to come in and create a custom number of which pages you want to actually print if you don't want to print everything. So this is really nice for things like 1099 forms of, hey, I want to print 2 copies and I want to print page 13 and 23 and not everything. So when you use that print to PDF, you'll see the same ability then to say exactly what you want printed and how and what number of pages. Simple things like that to kind of help out system-wide. And then there are a few places too where we have status colors, red, blue, red, green for approval items that might relate to, for example, timesheets. Let's say we're in our timesheet. Let me see if I can find one. Might be a while. Okay, so we have some color coding so you can quickly see, hey, we have some time that's been approved, versus if you see any red, it would be rejected time, blue would be submitted. And it depends on, again, what screen and what area of the system we're in. But more things have been color coded to help out with showing approval. Let's see where else I can go. Where's my timesheets? Trying to find a day that I actually have some of those time entries in there. All right, so that looks like the 30th. Let's go to the 30th. All right, so again, little color coding, simple, but if this had been rejected, it would just be a red rejected, or other areas where it can show things submitted, approved, rejected, overdue, and also includes some color coding along with that. Okay, so to kind of wrap it up, there's a few other things. One is conversations. And just in case you're unfamiliar, there's a whole guide on conversations, but we do have the two different tabs in here, and we do just in the tips and trick outline that the note itself really is an internal item that you say you want to record, and it's either something that comes up initially completed, unless you say, well, it's something I want to remind myself in a day. Um, update the guide, you put something in here. This is a note, this is internal. If I have this in here and maybe I've linked it to a company and a contact, and if I have this linked to a company and contact and I flip over to email, it automatically adds it as, oh, you want to email this to the contact or the client, and I'm going to go ahead and add them to it for you. And I'm going to click the box in the conversation that says, allow it to be seen by this client. Now, I don't have any emails in my system currently, um, but it's a quick way to say, add the people that I've linked this conversation to an email. And when I save it, it would send it out to that person. If I flip back to note, I want to make sure I take off the email too, because now remember, you can also email a note internally to other employees or coworkers. So you might also be emailing a note, but the difference is if I click email, it automatically adds anybody related to the project or the opportunity or company and contact that I am creating this conversation for. So if you do that and you flip back to note and say, no, it's just internal, you want to make sure you take that back off so it's not also including them in an email. And then again, it checks that box automatically if you hit email because it's telling the system, I really actually want to send this out. Let's see. So I have one more question and then we'll kind of wrap up the webinar if there's not any others. So I have a question about if you're in a job and you see boxes yellow, red, green next to the tasks. Oh, okay. So in schedules, you will see, and even on the project page itself, you'll see an overall red, yellow, green task, for example. Let me get back to my default. So any task that turns red can be a number of things. It can be like in here, I think I took the status out of mine actually. But what it's really saying is I have a due date, and based on when the project, if I have a project due date or I have a specific task constraint that something has to be done on a certain date, then it's telling us that it's overdue, getting close to being overdue, or it happened the actual date that the task was worked on is outside of the actual constraint that I gave it. Now, there's a lot of things related to the task turning. If it's green, it means it's still on track. I picked a bad example because I have no project due date on one of those. So it, but it will look at when should the task be started or finished and when did it start and when was it finished. And it will also look at when the project needs to be finished. Now, if you had a schedule that is set to just do things as soon as you possibly can and we don't have a project due date, then everything would always be green. If you have a schedule that's do it as soon as possible and now the plan complete date are outside of the project due date, it would turn those red. If you have task constraints that are rigid, this must happen on or before or no later or sooner than, and the actual dates are different than that, that will turn it red. So lots of things can indicate a schedule being red, yellow, or green. And we can help look at those more specifically for you if you want to send an example. So Another question, if you mark a project as favorite, can you sort your display so that it shows your favorites first? Let's see, your display options. Let's see if we have favorites as one of the options. I can sort them by, I do not see a way to sort them by favorites. And I guess part of the reason probably is because this page here and how I sort this one, and it's sorting within the group. So if I have no group, then this would sort everything by number. Um, and if it's grouped, it's going to sort the numbers within each grouping. But I can sort this out here. My favorites themselves, I believe, should be sorting then just based on number and name. So I have all my 14, 16, 17, 19. So it's really just sorting favorites by number. And I'm quite certain I don't have a way to sort my favorites. It's just going to be the project number. So really the display options here, no, you can't really say group by favorites or sort by favorites because that's the whole reason you create it, is to have your favorites on their own list. What I would recommend maybe doing if these two options don't work is just come in and customize your view and sort your view first, second, third. Now, again, I don't believe there's a tag for favorites and views. I guess because for one thing, it can quickly change. And I'm not sure if the favorites is even an option here, but you could manage to modify this in a way to then quickly sort those in a very specific way that you want. Let's see, and then how to get to, let's see, I'm not sure I understand the question on how to get to Sherry's. If you need additional help with anything and you email support@workamajig.com, that goes immediately to your account manager. And if you reach out to them, they could even set up follow-up calls if you need some additional guidance on some setup or again, seeing things very specific ways, or we can always help out by email as well. So I hope everybody learned something today. Um, that's always our goal with the webinars. And just a note again, if you open up the guide, just the support.workamajig.com, type in tips. These are a few things. There are some things about cut and paste formatting and conversations and things. I do want to note that we will have a new formatting available soon. So I don't know the exact time that it might be happening, but in the conversations, the formatting that we see here will be more robust. It will hold formatting in down the road in spec sheets and emails and things. So we are working diligently on a new formatting option that holds when those are sent out or printed. So keep watching your release notes to see when those might be coming up. It will be a lot, very nice, and do a lot more supporting of cut and paste features that you might not have available now. But again, let us know if you ever have suggestions and enhancements. They may already be worked on or in the works and on our list, but always appreciate everybody's feedback. And again, I really appreciate your time joining the webinar and hope it was helpful. And thank you all. I'll go ahead and wrap it up. And these are recorded, and we do later on send out and put in here in the webinars, we put in the recordings, and they'll come in and eventually be in the webinar itself. So you'll come in here, go to the past webinar, and sometimes it's a day or two, but the one from today should be right up here at the top in a day or a couple days, and you can then quickly come in. And there are others we've done on tips and tricks. So any of these you could come through and even see some past ones that were done, in February and so forth. So again, appreciate everyone's time. And I do see one chat. So thank you all for joining and have a great rest of your Wednesday. All right. Bye.